If you've been told to pull up your socks, then make sure it's a pair of TNT socks. The TNT shop is now open at tntradio.live. Patrick Henningsen talks on today's News Talk Radio, TNT.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to hour number 2 of this live broadcast. I'm Patrick Henningsen, your host, live and direct for these 2 hours. Thank heavens it's Friday. At least we all get to enjoy the weekend, but there's a lot going on in the world. I don't think the news is going to stop, not least of all this story. Israel's war cabinet approves an expansion of the Rafah operation. So can we call it a major invasion? Joe Biden, can we call it a major invasion? Because isn't that what Joe Biden said? He said, well, we're going to hold arms if it's a major operation or a major invasion. Not an invasion, but a major invasion. So we're into the game of semantics here. There's an ongoing genocide, 7 months. The bodies are piling up. It's disgusting. And Joe Biden's playing semantics. That's great. That's all we need from the commander-in-chief of the world's preeminent hyperpower. Oh, how empires fall. And this is a good example of one that is certainly in a terminal decline as we speak. The United States has threatened, Joe Biden's threatened to cut off supplies, as we've said before. If you're listening to our previous analysis in the first hour, cutting off supplies of offensive weapons. If Israel enters the population centers of Gaza City, they already have. And what's the difference between entering with tanks and entering via way of a 500-pound bomb that you just dropped on a building and you just liquidated a whole family, 3 generations worth? What's the difference? Is it any less devastating? Are we even having this conversation? Why are we having this conversation? A measured expansion of Israel's operation in densely populated Rafah, mostly refugee camps, people who fled northern Gaza when it was carpet bombed by the righteous IDF. Southern Gaza is now awash with refugees and people who are barely hanging on for dear life. And yet Benjamin Netanyahu, the psychopathic, warmongering Israeli leader, who will go down in history, make no mistake, ladies and gentlemen, he will go down right next to the pantheon of despots and war criminals, Benjamin Netanyahu. It's not going to be a glorious historical legacy for this guy. He's going right. He's just jumped ahead of Idi Amin and a whole bunch of other despots. He'll be up there with Mussolini and you know who, the tiny mustache man. That's where he's destined to go. The world knows this. The world sees this. But our lawmakers in Washington are still going, don't know if it's a genocide. Hamas is giving us bogus numbers. I mean, just ridiculous. Hamas doesn't run the Gaza Health Ministry. Newsflash for your airheaded senators and congressmen in the U.S. The money comes from the Palestinian Authority. It's not staffed by Hamas militants. Staffed by medical professionals, many of which are dead. Just saying. Sorry to be cruel and unusual. If you don't like this, if this is too much for you, well, I can't help you. These people are at the end of their rope, literally. So reports have come following Joe Biden's promise to stop supplying offensive weapons to Israel if they go into city centers. So they're bombing them. They're sending tanks in. Is this enough to cause a stoppage in the supply of the Israeli war machine? Don't know. It depends. They're saying it depends. So meanwhile, Israel seizes the border crossing between Gaza and Egypt, the Rafah border crossing. So they're bombing and they're launching airstrikes against civilians in this densely populated area, beleaguered civilians. So Axios reported on Friday an expansion of the area of operation has been approved by the IOF or IDF, Israeli Occupation Forces or Israeli Defense Forces, depending on what level of cognitive dissonance you have. So the Israeli media also reports that the Israelis are widening their area of operation. So is this going to constitute a breach of Biden's red line on the issue? This is the big question everybody's trying to figure out. Where is the red line? It's not red, it's pink. And it's not thin, it's thick and pink. And it's sort of spread out. It's diluted. In fact, we're looking for it. We can't find it. We can't find the red line. It's all over the place. We just see sort of a faint shade of pink here and there. Nobody knows where the red line is, least of all Joe Biden. So anyway, this is the way things are going right now. You've got all these fanatical, extremist, ethno-nationalist, Zionist maniacs like Ben Gvir and Finance Minister Bezos Smotrich. So unbelievable. Benjamin Netanyahu heading this ungodly coalition that has no choice but to continue doing what they're doing, because the moment they stop, Israeli society itself will probably ask for the ouster of this guy who is way past his sell-by date, but be under no delusions. Replacing Benjamin Netanyahu with anybody else isn't going to change much, because this government and everybody in it and most of Israeli society are 100% behind the ethnic cleansing and the genocide of the native Palestinian population. This is the fact. This is the reality. So he has a mandate as long as the job continues. The moment it stops, then he's out. They'll have to recalibrate, maybe make some new noises with Washington about the sort of more moderate Benny Gantz, as if. So that's where we're at on this situation. It doesn't look good any way you turn. Israel's locked into a death spiral of permanent war, and their international reputation will continue to erode the longer they're engaged in these crimes against humanity. This is just a reality. So he's either going to get skewered at home if he stops the war, or he'll get skewered internationally if he continues the war, you see. So they're locked into a classic death spiral. There's no way out. Nothing. This can end only in a tragic way. There are no good endings here. The good ending would have been for somebody with some adult in Washington to step forward and say enough is enough. Israel, hit the brakes. A good time to do that would have probably been about November 30th or October 30th, even better. But it didn't happen. In fact, there were people who were basically talking down and pushing out anybody who was talking about a ceasefire, marginalizing them, discrediting them, insulting them, calling them a terrorist sympathizer. All that happened. We were there. You were there. We all witnessed it. So you can see what humanity is capable of. You can see what humanity is capable of, given the chance. The absolute worst possible behavior, the worst possible political outcome, the worst possible outcome for the innocent people who have been killed in Palestine, and more to come. Because good people did nothing and bad people kept doing things that are just unspeakable, and no one stopped them. Never again was right now, as Netanyahu himself said. The irony of that statement is lost on him and his supporters, but not on the rest of the world. And that's how history will eventually write this sordid episode. Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. Now, our next guest, I want to play a video actually from Benjamin Rubenstein. We'll have him on in a few minutes. And he just released this on his X Twitter platform. We're just going to play you a quick clip here, and then we'll come back and go to break. But this is Benjamin Rubenstein. We'll be talking to him in a few minutes. Watch this preview.
Look on my work, see mighty, and despair. Over 1,500 years ago, the Roman Empire collapsed due to economic instability, political corruption, internal decay, and under the strain of multiple invading armies. 571 years ago, the Byzantine Empire collapsed for many of the same reasons, and only 102 years ago, the Ottoman Empire collapsed for many of the same reasons as the Byzantine and Roman Empire. Now the American Empire, in the year 2024, is poised for collapse. And by the end of this video, I think you'll be as convinced as I am. But what does the fall of an empire actually look like? Men in suits and robes just walking off the job one day and calling it quits? Not quite. It's also not necessarily in a blaze of glory. The Soviet Union collapsed with minimal bloodshed despite a significant nuclear arsenal. The Roman Empire lost colonies in Britain, Gaul, Spain, Dacia, and North Africa before its ultimate collapse. So you might be wondering, why is all this relevant? The answer is Israel. Israel is on the fast track to being the first major American colony to collapse. And when that happens, it will herald the beginning of the end of the most mighty of empires, the American Empire. But why is the American...
There it is, ladies and gentlemen. Great video presentation. Follow Ben on X, Twitter. You'll see the full-length version of that. It's about 6 minutes long, or maybe a little bit longer, but really great historical synopsis, the kind I absolutely love. That's why we're going to bring him onto the program after these messages. I'm Patrick Henningsen. You're listening and watching TNT, Today's News Talk. We'll be right back.
TNT's Jason Olbourne.
The January 6th committee, they brought in and produced it. They produced it, but they showed a lot of my internal cameras, my closed circuit TV security cameras from inside the Capitol. None of those cameras have audio. They're video only, yet the committee imported sounds to make it sound more dramatic. Imagine if a police chief anywhere in the world took body-worn camera, changed the audio to make it sound more damning on a suspect, and released that to the public. How do you think that would go?
That's an extraordinary statement, Steve. That is unbelievable. So a manipulation of supposed evidence in order to present or preserve a narrative. It's something that we've come to expect, sadly, but here we are in real time, realizing that how far this manipulation goes.
Weekends with Jason Olbourne on Today's News Talk, TNT. A better business tip from TNT Radio. News Talk Radio listeners are some of the most active and involved listeners of any format. TNT Radio listeners rely on TNT Radio often as their primary source of information. They trust TNT Radio and are highly engaged with the content. If you'd like more information about advertising on TNT Radio, simply fill out your details on our contact page and we'll be in touch. To find out more, go to tntradio.live. If you're still wearing a cloth or surgical mask around in public, you're guilty of spreading COVID misinformation. It really is that simple. Today's News Talk Radio, TNT.
Welcome back, folks. Welcome back. I'm Patrick Henningsen, your host. We're live and direct here for these 2 hours. We're in the second hour of this live broadcast, and before the break, I played you a preview of a video that was posted on X by our next guest, Benjamin Rubenstein, joining us on the live link right now. Ben, welcome to the program.
Glad to be back, Patrick. Thank you.
It's the subject of your video is something that a lot of people spend a lot of time talking and thinking about and wondering when this current hegemon, this empire, is going to collapse. Is it collapsing? Are we in a procession of a new world order? What does this look like? Put some historical context to it. You kind of tried to do this in your brief presentation. I think it was very thought-provoking, Ben, but yeah, walk us through your thought process on this about how empires collapse. And is that what we're looking at right now?
Yeah, Patrick, I think it is what we're looking at. My inspiration for that video was the poem Ozymandias by Percy Shelley. And astute listeners will notice I quoted it twice. And I've been thinking back, all empires collapsed. The Roman Empire collapsed, the Byzantine Empire, and the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire is really interesting, especially in relation to Palestine, because after the Ottoman Empire collapsed about 102 years ago, that was basically when the League of Nations gave Palestine to Britain under the British mandate. So we're still living in this sort of trajectory of collapsing empires, and it would be I think it would be naive of anyone to assume that empires have stopped collapsing for no reason, because just within the past 130 or so years alone, we've seen 3 empires collapse. You've seen the Ottoman Empire collapse, you've seen the Third Reich collapse, the British Empire collapse. and actually 4 because the Soviet Union, it collapsed as well. And as I mentioned in the video, there's they had a nuclear arsenal much like Israel does, but still it collapsed with minimal bloodshed. And during the collapse of the Soviet Union, you had, it's, I guess some would call them colonies, some would use other terms for them, but regardless, those sort of satellite states of the Soviet Union began collapsing before everything really came home to roost in the primary part of Russia, Moscow.
So by the Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire, you mentioned all of these. Do you see any commonalities between empires in decline? And are we looking at any of those factors today with the United States?
Yeah, well, I think already American empires are American colonies rather are collapsing. Israel is the first major one that's starting to head down a downward trajectory. But look at what's happening in Niger right now. It's fascinating. Only less than a year ago, the French were kicked out of Niger, and a lot of people can believe that Niger is a French colony, along with or formerly French colony, along with a few other West African states. But in this scenario, it's actually a little more complicated because France is essentially a U.S. colony as well. So by the French losing control of Niger, the U.S. also lost control of Niger, and that's taken place just this past week in a very material way. So going back a little bit, the French got kicked out of Niger after a popular military government came to power through a coup, a very popular coup, and ECOWAS, backed by the United States, backed by France, were basically, we're going to invade Niger if you don't reverse course. And that never happened. Now, why didn't that happen? It's super fascinating. It didn't happen, in my view, for a number of reasons. But the primary reason is because of Wagner, because of Russia, and because of Iran. Iran had IRGC intelligence assistance going on. Wagner had boots on the ground. And because of that presence, France and ECOWAS were completely deterred from going after Niger, which could have been just, a level of warfare beyond anything we've seen in a decade, beyond what we're even seeing right now in Gaza. Just in terms of the total geographical area and possibly even death. So that all didn't happen because of counter-hegemonic forces gaining strength. And so now fast forward, half a year or so later, I believe, the U.S. has now been told to leave its military bases by the popular military government of Niger. So what that looks like on a material level is there is a base used by the U.S. in the past, a drone base, and a highly advanced drone base that's seated about 1,000 U.S. military personnel. And it was said that this base was used for surveillance of terrorist groups. Now, that surveillance has come into question by a lot of people who are on the ground in Niger, who live in Niger, who have openly questioned the role this drone base actually played. So a lot of people would say, it's funny, we would be having weapon shipments and military convoys and nobody knew the location, but it just happened to be that these terrorist groups somehow found them and somehow clashed with them just at the right moment. And there was wide speculation that instead of this base being used to spy on the activities of these terrorist groups, these Al-Qaeda style terrorist groups, they were actually being used to feed some information to these groups. And so Niger had enough. They overthrew the government, and now they've kicked the U.S. out. And actually, you had this crazy situation where literally on this military base, in one airplane hangar, you had U.S. troops, and on the same military base, not so far away, the other aircraft hangar had Russian troops. So my point is, the U.S. is already losing its colonies. Niger, yes, maybe a minor colony, but it supplied France with a huge amount of uranium at discount costs. And so the U.S. is losing their grip on Africa, West Africa in particular.
Yeah, it's important to highlight that the French Empire, or the Francophone former French Empire, which is nested under the U.S. wing as well, which you've quite rightly pointed out there. So you just mentioned, maybe we can get into America's lost colony. And when I say lost, I mean they're currently in the process of losing. We're talking about the state of Israel, which was formerly Britain's creation, and it looks like, anyway, Ben, you might be able to illustrate, this maybe a little bit better, but it looks like it was taken over by the United States. So the United States took over the custodial duties of the modern state of Israel, after it was
Sure.
established by the British. And where is it now? It's lost without a purpose. It's now in a terminal death spiral in terms of this war that it's prosecuting against the native Palestinian population. And this is a U.S. outpost. It's a Western outpost. Make no mistake about it.
It's the
It
most
is one of.
significant one
Yeah,
probably in the
go ahead, Ben.
world,
Go ahead.
actually. Yeah, no, Israel is probably the most significant colonial outpost in the world. And as you said in the video I published, I used the term colonial transference. And that is basically the process of one empire's colony having their parent empire collapse and another one coming in to swoop it up, which has happened many times throughout history, many times. I believe specifically it happened regarding Jerusalem. Actually, it seems to be a point of colonial transference. Jerusalem has been under the mandate, I suppose, of at least a half a dozen different empires throughout the millennia. So it seems to be happening yet again, and that is basically because the US is deteriorating, and it's deteriorating not just in West Africa, but also in the Middle East. It's profound. Look what happened in Afghanistan. 20 years, we get beat by men wearing sandals despite going up against the most advanced military in world history, in human civilization ever. Billions and billions, trillions of dollars being put into our military, and somehow a bunch of men in sandals, guerrilla force, were able to beat us out through protracted warfare, as some people like to say. But that's really what it was. They waited, they bided their time, and they kicked us out. The U.S. is also somewhat losing its grip on Saudi Arabia, which is a major aspect of upholding the value of the U.S. dollar, which is sort of the bedrock of the U.S. empire. And Turkey is kind of wishy-washy, so you can't really count on that. But it wasn't so long ago the U.S. lost its ally in Iran in the 1900s. So the U.S. has been steadily losing influence in the Middle East, I'd say at least since the 1970s, probably before then. Iraq has repeatedly attempted to kick the U.S. out of their country. We'll see how that goes, but these quote Iranian-backed militias, as our State Department stenographers like to call them, are not letting up, and their responses seem to always be directly in proportion to the screw ups of the Western Empire. And Israel, as I also have referred to them in the past, is a mad dog. They've stopped taking orders. And so what's going to happen is that they're either going to upset the U.S. enough where that mad dog gets put down, or they're going to upset their neighbors enough where that mad dog gets put down. But either way, it's going to get put down, and it's already starting to happen. It's like a slow creep into just total collapse. And a lot of people question, why haven't groups like Hezbollah done more? But in the meantime, well over 70,000 settlers have been kicked out of settlements in the north of Israel, which is an active process of decolonization. So in a very material, concrete, and tangible way, the decolonization of Palestine is actually already happening right before our very eyes, and everyone is powerless to stop it. And it's not just that, it's also the shekel, the currency of Israel, is also under siege in a way that is just, so powerful and impressive, because also not only does everybody seem powerless to stop Hezbollah, but even the United States has admitted that they're powerless to stop the Houthis, Ansar Allah, and they've asked for diplomatic negotiations. And props to the Houthis for saying, listen, our red line is Palestine. Stop the war, we stop the blockade. It's that simple. But the Houthis haven't used the full capacity of their military. They still can do significantly more, especially if things pop off into just like full uncontrolled escalation. Right now, the escalation is teetering on the edge of being controlled or not. But they're ready to escalate. Hezbollah is ready to escalate. I think Iran is going to stay out of it unless things get like really crazy, like dropping nukes or something, simply because they had their opportunity, right? They had their opportunity, and Joe Biden had his opportunity, and Israel had their opportunity to really hash out a full-blown confrontation, and all sides involved decided to put the brakes on and say, no, this is not going to happen. So I don't see that popping off, as it were, in a significant way. But I do think through so-called proxies who are autonomous, the situation is on it's in a cascading effect, and people are trying to put the brakes on it, but Israel is just belligerent. They're belligerent. And now we've seen they're not only have they been economically and militarily decolonized by Hezbollah and the Houthis, but they've now been politically decolonized in a lot of senses because of the vote at the United Nations today, which was profound. That Palestine was able to get a concession it has been fighting for its entire period of colonization under the Israeli military, basically. So Palestine now has significant rights, even ranking higher than the Vatican itself in terms of UN rights. So it's happening on all fronts. Israel is actively being decolonized, and the U.S. is seeming to trying to put on the brakes under Joe Biden. Maybe he's stopping shipments, maybe he's not, and maybe that continues. Point is, the U.S. is facing significant instability on its own, and from the Democratic base and viewpoint, in order to sort of maintain any semblance of stability and not fall to tyranny and dictatorship under Donald Trump, they need to win the election, right? And so to save American democracy, they need to tell Israel to go F itself, essentially, by saying, listen, you're on your own, or otherwise Joe Biden's just not going to win the election, and Trump will come in. So the political instability is significant in the U.S.
Yeah, and that's talking about the colony of Israel, the mad dog that's off the leash, and the rabid mad dog out of control, attacking everybody in the neighborhood, off the leash, and eventually it's going to have to either be retrained, tamed, or put down, depending, or reconstitute in some other form, maybe another state, perhaps, maybe an all-inclusive state, a non-apartheid state.
United States of the Levant, or United States of the Holy Land. I think that's the way to go.
Or Greater Syria, if you Syrian National Socialist Party like to talk about. It was Greater Syria for a period of time after the collapse of the Ottoman Empire. And all problems were solved. I mean, no problems there. Jerusalem is a neutral city. I mean, what's not to like? But of course, that's going to trigger a lot of people. The Lebanese won't like it, some of them. But men in sandals, the Houthis, Ansar Allah in Yemen, another bunch of men in sandals that have taken major military powers to task, and over the period of the war with Saudi Arabia and the UAE. It's pretty safe to say that Yemen kicked ass and took names and they got stronger despite getting bombed and pounded into oblivion for like 9 years. And now look at them; they're actually steering and changing the geopolitics of the region. One of the poorest countries in the world, by the way, which is partitioned. Unfortunately, that has to be resolved. Back to history, though, Ben, you brought up an important point. You're talking about Jerusalem. So step back, Ben. Look at history. Look at all the procession of crusades to try to occupy and control the Silk Road, the discovery of oil in the late, 1900s into the 20th century. So could we look at the establishment of the state of Israel as another crusade by European powers? What do you think?
I think that's a great question, Patrick, and I would almost want to refer to it as sort of a shadow crusade because it didn't happen while there was bloodshed. 750,000 Palestinians expelled or killed. It didn't happen with all the sort of fanfare that we think of the Crusades having today. So it was sort of a shadow crusade where people were imported in, and it was marketed to the world population as a peaceful solution. What do we do with all these Jews that have nowhere to go? Well, in my opinion, they should have stayed in Europe and rebuilt it. That didn't happen for a new number of reasons, and I believe it was because the British Empire was trying to maintain their hold on that colony. It didn't work. But in regards to other crusades, absolutely, Patrick, you look at the aftermath of other crusades that have happened throughout time and has led to the expansion of things like trade networks being shared throughout regions, and knowledge, technology, all of these things resulted as a consequence of prior crusades. And that has also happened with Israel. I mean, Israel is one of the biggest intelligence, knowledge, and technology, weapons. I mean, this is a huge aspect of the of the global economy. And it's not just American technology being manufactured in Israel. Israel has created its own highly advanced intelligence technology, specifically for surveillance and security, which Palestine is of course used as sort of a testing ground, the West Bank as a testing ground, and even Gaza as a testing ground for these technologies, which they then sell to other countries. A great example, look what happened in Saudi Arabia with Jamal Khashoggi. He was killed, and they were able to do that because they were spying on his WhatsApp messages, essentially using Israeli technology. And look what's happening in Gaza with Leviathan, or Lavender rather. They have used Lavender again to spy on people and have executed tens of thousands of people, more than likely using this technology. So the parallels of what has happened at the collapse of other empires and what has happened at the rather the parallels between what has happened with other crusades and what has happened with this sort of shadow crusade are significant, especially in terms of knowledge and technology being distributed globally.
Yeah, and also it's interesting the zealots. That's where the term zealotry and zealots comes from. The zealots and the role they played in previous crusades. So that religious fundamentalism, that religious extremism, as the rally cry, as the battle cry to mobilize.
That is the rallying cry. But I think we have this tendency when we look at history to think of things like the Crusades as religious wars, but they're really not. That was just, as you said, the rallying cry. And today, under we use the term propaganda, which is essentially, when it comes down to it, the same thing. Back then, we didn't want Muslims to control Jerusalem. Okay, now the Jews control Jerusalem. But this isn't a holy war. This isn't a war of religion. And while you do have these zealots and extremists, I guess our zealots of the modern era are now extremists, like Itamar Ben-Gvir, who wants to take down the Al-Aqsa Mosque and build the third Jewish temple, which would likely be an apocalyptic event. Not just because of, I'm not trying to sound prophetic, but the amount of people they would piss off if they actually did take down the Al-Aqsa Mosque and build a third Jewish temple would be, it's a sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? I mean, what came first, the chicken or the egg? What came first, the Messiah or the bulldozers? I don't know. So
No, absolutely. And yeah, it's important to put it in perspective. And that's a great point, that the religious aspect is merely part of the trigger. And that behind that you have empire and you have the
and
domination
land
of
resources. Yeah.
all of that. Yeah. Very important to, I think if people make that distinction, it brings the conversation to a much more rational a place, and where we can analyze what's going on rather than get tied up in our religious affiliations and belief sets. So go ahead.
Sure. And, we can also begin to use dialogue that is less divisive and more healing when we take it away from that religious aspect. And you see a prime example is how the Israeli government say, oh, this is the only Jewish state, this is the only Jewish state, and God gave us this land. But it's not really about that. It's about the fact that they've taken the land from somebody else and are exploiting it. They want Gaza's natural reserves. They want to project US hegemony throughout the region. Israel, I think there are more than likely some people in Israel who see the U.S. empire on having its own problems, having its own sort of downward spiral that now we see Israel on. And perhaps these people in Israeli leadership, like Itamar Ben-Gvir, are a bit delusional, seeing the U.S. collapse and not themselves. That being said, they want to expand into other regions. They want Israel to control Syria, Iraq, Jordan, Egypt, etc. And so they are, I guess they're, in a sort of interesting way, they're trying to oversee their own colonial transference, right? Because it wouldn't be like, oh, if they were to do this against the United States wishes, because the United States isn't strong enough to keep Israel in check like it used to be, because it is certainly not anymore, and it was at one point. Then Israel is sort of not liberating itself from the colonial dominance of the US, but it's become so strong as a colony where it is attempting to oversee its own colonial transference and break free of sort of any sort of oversight of the United States. And I think that there are minds in Israeli leadership and even in the Zionist movement who are actively trying to make that happen, or at least try to make the U.S. more subservient, which is absolutely the case, to Israel's interests, to the point of putting Israel before America.
All those things are happening as well. That's exactly what's playing out in front of us right now. I'm with Benjamin Rubenstein, political commentator. Do follow him on X, Twitter. Ben, I don't know if you got a few minutes to hang with us after the break, but I've got this amazing choice clip from Donald Trump. I want to get your comment on. Absolutely incredible. Okay. I'm here with Benjamin Rubenstein. Look, we're going to continue the political conversation. Little focus on U.S. politics as it relates to this Israeli issue. Coming up on the other side, I'm Patrick Henningsen, your host. Stay with us, folks. We'll be right back.
I was a quarterback at Hardaway High School, college first-round draft pick. On and off the field, we were taught to not show any signs of weakness. During the football season, I would stop eating, but I didn't know I was depressed. I thought that something was wrong with me. For 20 plus years was physical. We didn't have any education behind what mental health was. I started to learn it starts here first. If this is together, I'll be better as a father, as a man, and as a husband. Put the importance on your mental health. I'm not scared to talk about it anymore. The first tool is therapy. The second one is positive self-talk. And then journaling, putting your thoughts on paper. We have to redefine what being a strong man is and heal, love your mind.
She used to dance and dream of a better life, a brighter future. Today, thanks to Children International and friends like you, she dances for the world. Together, we give children in poverty a chance to set their sights high and achieve their dreams. Learn more about Children International and join us in our life-changing work at children.org today.
With a compelling perspective on global politics, this is the Patrick Henningsen Show on TNT Radio.
Welcome back, folks. Final segment, the final hour of this live broadcast. I'm Patrick Henningsen, your host. Very pleased to be joined by Benjamin Rubenstein. He's a political commentator. He's also putting up some extraordinary video content. Follow him on his social media platforms. I'll give you a chance to shout out some of those platforms at the end of the segment, Ben. But let's talk about U.S. politics. And, the issue of Israel-Palestine, what's happened in Gaza, this is absolutely infiltrated U.S. politics in a major, major way during this election year. And already you're seeing the panic buttons being hit by the Democrats, by the Biden administration. They're literally losing, Gen Z, basically. They can pay for all the influencers they want, but the vanguard political people are on campuses and they reject this administration. They're going to sit out and protest vote. They're not going to vote for Trump, obviously. And RFK is out of the question, right? So it's Jill Stein or I'm just not going to participate. And thank you very much. So isn't that incredible? So it's going to become a competition, Ben. I don't know if you've seen this, as to who can be more loyal to Israel between Biden and Trump. And that's kind of where the media and they've herded them into this little
who
lane,
can sell out our
basically.
country
Go
best,
ahead.
right? Exactly. No, it's who can sell out our country best, right? I mean, like, Trump has taken less money from AIPAC than Biden has, but Biden has also been taking money from AIPAC since like the 1990s, early 1990s. I think his number is at 4,300,000, where Trump is floating around the 1 million area. But those donations for Trump are really going to be pouring in this election cycle. So he's trying to milk that for all he can. And it's really political opportunism is what it is. I don't think Trump gives a damn about Israel or Palestine. I think what Trump actually wants is peace, but in his own kind of convoluted way. But at the end of the day, he's got to pander to his voter base, and I don't think MAGA is completely aligned with Trump on his super pro-Zionist stance. I don't see it happening. You have the America First movement and Nick Fuentes, who I'm not a fan of, but they do represent a large portion of Americans who are basically saying we just need to drop Israel, or at least we need to make it so. What they're actually saying is we need to make it so Israel is coming second to the U.S. Whereas I am sort of Israel never. They're Israel second. America first. I'm America first. Israel never. That being said, I think it's become like it always does. It's become a rat race of who can pander to the billionaires the most, and I think this is actually going to result in a fair degree of political nihilism, which is really unfortunate because, as you said, it's the progressives. They don't have a good option. Jill Stein, she's great on a lot of stuff, but she just doesn't have she just isn't able to turn out the numbers. You've got Cornel West, great on a lot of stuff, isn't able to turn out the numbers. And so with no good option, what are you going to do? You're going to stay home and not vote. I mean, that's probably what I'm going to do. I'm not going to go to the embassy in Managua to vote for anybody who is actively causing or wants to promote a genocide. I'm just not going to do it. I'm not going to take the time out of my day. And if I were an American, I would sure as hell not wait in line for 9 hours, have my friends get arrested for bringing me pizza while I'm waiting in line and just to vote for somebody. It's just not going to happen. It doesn't matter anyways at the end of the day. So
you're stuck in that conundrum.
It's not just
Ben.
the progressives, it's the Muslims too.
Yeah, well, they've lost quite a few of those. So you're stuck in that conundrum. Protest vote for Jill Stein, that's going to pull votes away from Democrats. That's going to help Republicans. Vote for RFK. let's just say that put the Israel issue aside. Who's that going to benefit? I'm not sure. Maybe that's why the Israeli machine is putting a lot of money into RFK, because they want to pull some of those Democrat votes away. Maybe I'm just saying. So
Yeah, they've
same in
got
the UK.
their Zionist hitman, Shmuley Botiek, the protege of former, now deceased Zionist warlord Sheldon Adelson. And I call him a warlord because he was responsible for funding many of these settlements. But
allegedly a rabbi. Allegedly a rabbi.
Allegedly a rabbi. Yeah, I don't know what kind of rabbi sells sex products with his daughter, but
yeah,
make of that what you will.
But the British are in the same position because the Labour Party has shunned its base with their support for Israel. So
and look what's happened. At least in the UK,
it's empowering the conservatives.
Yeah, but also, like, in a sense, as an American, I'm envious. I'm envious of the United Kingdom because you guys got George Galloway, and George Galloway, in my mind, has a path to prime minister. We don't have somebody who's capable of pulling that off in the United States, and so I'm very much jealous. And perhaps the United Kingdom, despite being a monarchy, is more of a democracy than the United States.
Well, at least they have some plurality in the House of Commons with a Galloway or a Craig Murray, maybe in the next election. Hopefully, that would be certainly something. But yeah, I mean, but the protest vote on the left is going to favor the status quo, which is the conservatives that are pro-Israel to the hilt. Same sort of thing in America. So it's a really uncomfortable and depressing dynamic. I'm almost on the verge of nihilism myself looking at this, Ben. I can tell you are as well, like thinking this is not a good election cycle at all. It doesn't feel like an election. Anyway, I want to play you this clip here that Donald has really outdone himself, I think, for Trump quips. This really goes up into the trophy case. Let's go ahead and roll this. I want to get your reaction to this one.
Thank you very much. What Biden is doing with respect to Israel is disgraceful. If any Jewish person voted for Joe Biden, they should be ashamed of themselves. He's totally abandoned Israel, and nobody can believe it.
I mean, isn't it Biden who said in 2020, if you ain't voting for Biden, you ain't black.
You ain't black. Yeah, you ain't Jewish. You're a fake Jew. You're a self-loathing capo if you vote for
You don't
Joe
vote
Biden.
for Trump. You ain't
That's
Jewish.
basically what he's saying. It's the same thing I hear from these Twitter trolls. Oh, you're against Israel? You're a self-hating Jew. You're a capo. You know, you're a fake Jew. I got called a fake Jew like 30 times yesterday. So, but the difference, as I mentioned to you, Patrick, the difference is that unlike when Joe Biden was like, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black, you didn't really have black people repeating that line, but Trump does have Zionists repeating that line. Trump has millions of Zionists repeating that line. And I think that Trump can count on the Jewish vote. I think he can, but there's not a ton of Jews. And there are far more Muslims. I believe there are far more Muslim voters than there are Jewish voters. So it's interesting how, I mean, I'd have to look at the numbers, and I'm tempted to, but with the immigration the way it has been, especially since like the endless war on terrors began, I think there's tons of Muslim voters, and Jews represent a far greater fraction of the world population than Muslims do. Far greater. I think there's 4% of the global population is Jewish or something like that, and Muslims have like over 1 billion people. So anyways, it's interesting to see these kinds of new ethnic political divisions being cut. It seemed before October 7th that Muslims were really starting to move closer to the right because the right upheld a lot of their traditional values and the Democrats do not. But the Palestine issue is so critical to Muslims that it seems that instead of the breaking away of the Democratic Party, they've actually been funneled back to the Democratic Party. And whereas Jews, who have been historically, they've mostly been historically democratic, but they do seem to be going right now. I mean, even these progressive Zionist Jews, some of them are like, yeah, stop the shipments, we got to live in peace. But a lot of progressive Zionist Jews, especially those with sort of dual Israeli American citizenship, are like, never Biden now, basically. Oh, yeah. So, no, I mean, the Jews have been alienated. Zionist Jews have been alienated from the Democratic base. Muslims have been alienated from the Democratic base as well. The tricky situation that Biden is in is if he wants to sort of rope those Muslims back in from the Republican Party and from deviating from the Democratic Party. He needs to win them over through the Palestine cause, and the Palestinian cause. I don't personally, in my estimation, I think freezing a few weapons shipments actually isn't enough. I don't think it's enough, because Israel is going to continue anyways, and people are still going to blame Biden because he set them up for what they're doing now. He sent them enough arms to go through the Rafah invasion. They don't actually need this next shipment of arms. So, if Biden doesn't take it further, he's not going to be able to rope those Muslim voters back in. He's just not. He needs to make sure Palestine gets a state, and he needs to be visibly the one making that happen. And he blew a golden opportunity to seal the election, to really seal the election for Democrats. He blew that opportunity when the United States voted against the establishment of a Palestinian state about a month ago at the United Nations Security Council.
That was a big missed one, as was today recognizing Palestine as a UN member. The United States had, I mean, that would have been an easy one, right? I mean, you're not giving him a state, you're just giving him representation, right?
And did you see the Israeli ambassador with the little mini shredder shredding the UN charter? Yeah, he got on stage.
We got that clip, Ben. Let's
you
roll
do?
That clip from the UN.
Watch this bring
one.
Bring it.
Here he goes.
This is you are shredding the UN Charter with your own hands. Yes, that's what you're doing. Shredding the UN Charter. Shame on you.
Is that meant to be a comedy skit?
Just like, I mean, they say the Jews own Hollywood, right? With that kind of theatrics, I mean, maybe they do, because that was so entertaining to watch. No, I mean, I'm joking, obviously, but that was just something else when he did that. It does say in the UN Charter they did follow an actual UN procedure. So
that's fantastic. That is a literally Chinese office shredder, $4.99 at Ryman's or
Alibaba,
whatever. Alibaba or Staples, and they've
got 100 sitting in the warehouse. Just
fantastic.
Gotta buy in bulk.
What a great! And there must be marketing for these little shredders. I mean, everyone's going to run out and want one now. No,
I almost want one. Just gonna wear it around my neck anytime I don't like something. I'm just gonna shred a piece of paper.
Shred it, yeah. Let's get it. Let's start doing that. Start making videos with the shredder. I mean, the performative.
It's the next viral TikTok meme, right?
The dramatics from the Israeli delegation at the UN are just legigendary at this point, and they just outdone.
I mean, I remember when they came out with their gold stars. They wore their gold star. That was so disgusting to me. I wanted to vomit. It was disgusting. I mean, these people are not oppressed in any way. They literally have an ethno-supremacist state, and yet they're wearing their gold stars. I mean, they literally have replaced the Nazis. It's just appalling to me. It's absolutely appalling.
Yeah, the opposite of oppressed, I would say. They're just overprivileged, really, and allowed to have a run of the joint. Now, we've got a couple of minutes left, Ben, and anyway, thank you for joining us. I appreciate you coming on the program. And again, we've shared and retweeted your latest video, which is really a crash course in empires, 6-minute video, I think. And I encourage people to follow Ben on your various platforms. Give us a shout out about where all your media platforms are, Ben.
Yeah, the best place to follow me, Ben F. Rubenstein, the letter F, RUBINSTEIN on Twitter, and at the same tag now on YouTube. I'm trying to grow my YouTube. So it's appreciated if you could follow me there as well. And, you know, if you have suggestions for the next video, I'm trying to do longer videos. Love to hear them. Love to hear what the audience thinks. Thanks for having me, Patrick.
No, great to have you as well. And get on Instagram and TikTok as well. Nico House and they're getting lonely on there. They need people like you to come into the fray and help with content on those platforms. Benjamin Rubenstein, thank you very much for joining us today. And a big thank you to the historian Mats Nilsson from Sweden. What a great segment, and really a time to reflect on history and how it's affected so many people, especially in Europe, and what that means today. Great segment all around. Thank you guys for joining us. Thank you everyone in the TNT chat room. I'll see you guys on Monday. We already have a powerful show lined up. We're going to have some impactful guests waiting for you, our listeners and our viewers, on Monday. I'm Patrick Henningsen signing out. Have a great weekend. All the best.